Hey everyone, this is Derek Bros with the Conscious Resistance Network, and today we're going to talk about why you should stop asking Facebook to become a public utility. First though, I want to remind you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com, scroll down here, sign up for our newsletter which gets sent out every weekend, and you can get these weekly updates like this, and you get all of our latest content, plus just keep up with what we're working on next. And by subscribing to our website, of course, you get all this great content right here before anybody else, and you're not dependent on social media channels. Now, let's get into this. Now, if you've heard me discuss what I've been kind of predicting or seeing for a few months now, where around the elections and following the elections, there would be a big push to turn the social media companies, the social media giants, tech giants, Facebook particularly, into public utilities, government-controlled public utilities, in order to fight the censorship, or in order to stop the election interference. There's different reasons, because it's the interesting thing that I've been trying to note and get you guys to realize is it's coming from both left and right. I've seen people that I respect, like Jimmy Dore on the left, progressive left, saying, the answer, he's calling out the Facebook censorship and the purge and everything, but he's saying the answer is to put the government in charge, which doesn't really surprise me coming from somebody who's left-leaning. And then even though on the right, I've heard people like Alex Jones, kind of polar opposite, and others on the right say that, in order to stop this censorship, President Trump should, break up the monopolies of the social media companies and put them in the hands of the government. And I think ultimately that's the goal that they're after, is to put these companies in the hands of the government, which will help them push a Chinese-style social credit system, which, if you haven't heard, is going to be completely live and active for China's 1.3 billion people by 2020. And then you take into consideration what's happening in the United States when you have 5G coming in 2020, 2021, the Internet of Things. All travel in the United States, domestic and international travel, will require facial recognition scanning and other biometrics by 2020. And we're headed in the same direction, right? To me, putting social media companies who already have so much information on people, already know algorithms about how we're going to respond and how we are going to interact with each other, and can predict relationships, can predict our emotional states, and then trigger our emotional states. Putting that institution with that much power and that much knowledge in the hands of the government is a step towards the totalitarian social credit system here in the United States. We'll see how it plays out. But I did want to point out this latest article that came from Rolling Stone called "Who Will Fix Facebook?" and by Matt Taibbi, I think is how you say it. And some of you may be familiar with him, and of course familiar with Rolling Stones. Well, we've been waiting for this article, we being the independent media, kind of behind the scenes, because he interviewed a bunch of people from Anti-Media Free Thought Project and other independent outlets following the purge in early October. And we all felt like this was done because of the influence of the Atlantic Council, which is connected to the NATO nations and the U.S. military, to keep us from influencing the election in any kind of way, right? And those pages are still taken down without any kind of explanation. So he does an interesting article here, and honestly, I appreciate it. Let me just say that we appreciate that our situation could get covered in Rolling Stone, where it's probably going to get seen and heard by people who would have never come across what we do. But he kind of references, like, he calls us conspiracy theorists in some way. He compares Jason Bassler of the Free Thought Project, saying he's no Alex Jones, but he still talks about chemtrails and vaccinations and this and that. But he does bring up the Atlantic Council. Like, there's a lot of good in here, is what I'm saying. There's a lot of good in here. He mentions, the Anti-Media, the Free Thought Project. It's really long. It's covers some good stuff, though, and hopefully everybody reads all the way through it and can really see it and see what's going on here. But see, there's Jason right there looking all fancy, Jason Bassler of the Free Thought Project. It says the Free Thought Project may not be pro-publica, but Bassler is no Alex Jones. And this talks about how under the algorithms, these fact checkers that Facebook put in, that Free Thought Project was flagged as false news 2 times. And in 2 of those cases, the false ratings were overturned by PolitiFact and AP. So after they had already labeled them fake news, Jason and the Free Thought Project fought back and actually were, they were found not guilty of spreading fake news. But of course, by then, people have already bought the BS, and there's no going back and telling people, oh, by the way, we're not fake news, and people will believe what they want, right? So this article gets into the whole situation. It takes a lot of different standpoints. It talks about libertarians like Daniel McAdams, the Ron Paul Institute. It talks about Caitlin Johnstone calls her a controversial writer. So they mention like a lot of our community and people here talk about fake news. It's worth your time. But, let's see where he starts here. Let me just do a control find real quick for public utility. Okay. We could have recognized de facto mega distributors as public utilities, making algorithms for things like Google searches and Facebook news feeds transparent, allowing legitimate outlets to know how they're being regulated and why. Instead, this story may be turning into one of the oldest narratives in politics, the misuse of a public emergency to suspend civil rights and concentrate power. So he's talking about data collection right there. And as I said, I think that basically what these people are pushing for, and what many people are indirectly calling for, is that the government needs to be in control of this. It says, in its effort to clamp down on fake news, Russian trolls, and Nazis, the social media giant has also been banning innocent people. So there's the problem, right? And the reaction, no, save us. Proving, again, it can't be trusted to regulate itself. So if it's not going to regulate itself as a private company, which again, we all know it's not a private company because it gets billions of dollars from the government and subsidies, and then also, like I said, it's working with the Atlantic Council that is directly tied to the U.S. government and the U.S. military. It is a quasi-private at best, but that argument is just old hat at this point. But let's look at this definition according to Wikipedia. What does it mean to be a public utility? Public utility is an organization that maintains the infrastructure for a public service, often providing a service using that infrastructure. Public utilities are subject to forms of public control. And what they mean by public, it doesn't mean you and me, like people power, people control. It means government control, like, because it's part of the whole misnomer and the misinformation that government is made up of the people and not some invasive entity that is interfering in your life and your ability to organize your affairs. Public utilities are subject to forms of public control and regulation ranging from local community-based control to statewide government monopolies, more than likely statewide government monopolies. The terms utilities can refer to services provided by these organizations consumed by the public: coal, electricity, natural gas, water, sewage, telephone, and transportation. And broadband internet services are increasingly being included with this definition, including things like 5G and social media and stuff. It says in the United States, public utilities are often natural monopolies because the infrastructure required to produce and deliver such a product, such as electricity, is very expensive to build and maintain. Actually, the reason they are quote-unquote natural monopolies is because the state prevents people from competing in a lot of these areas. We can't just go dig up our own wells and then try to start offering water to people because they say, no, this is publicly owned, but really it means government owned, and then they work with these monopolies in order to shell out these services to us. And it does mention how developments in technology have eroded some of the monopoly aspects of traditional public utilities. For instance, electricity generation, electricity retailing, telecommunications, some types of public transit, and postal services have become competitive in some countries, and trend towards liberalization, deregulation, and privatization of public utilities is growing. So here again, public utilities can be privately owned or publicly owned. Publicly owned include cooperative and municipal utilities. Municipal utilities include territories outside of city limits, may or may not serve the entire cities. Anyway, so you get the point here. This is the reason I don't think it's a good idea is because does the government do a good job in offering any of these other services? Like, do these companies, the private, like say the electricity, there's a couple of companies that have a monopoly on that, and they work with the government, and they're heavily regulated, right? So people are saying, look, Facebook is the biggest social media company. They have no competition that can really take them out. They have an effective monopoly, so the government should get involved and regulate them, and play a role in that. Look, if that happens, then fine. Those of you who want to stay on Facebook and deal with the government involved in your activities and via Facebook and all that kind of stuff, like, stay there. Do that if you want, but it's not the solution. The solution is to choose decentralized alternatives and to go to blockchain-based alternatives, go to decentralized alternatives, go to censorship-free platforms. And really what it requires, though, once you start to understand this, it requires an entire leveling up of the infrastructure of the internet itself, because it's not enough to say, okay, well, let's just get, we'll use Steemit or we'll use BitChute, right? Well, some of you may have heard recently that BitChute was denied being able to work with PayPal, because they don't like some of the content that they're hosting. So they can't get them directly, so they're going to say, well, we won't allow you to process payments via using our institutions. And then soon they can go after the ISPs, the internet service providers, and they can go to the domain hosting services. There's different infrastructure that create what we know as the internet, and until we have decentralized versions of all of that infrastructure, agorist counter economy alternatives, then we're going to face censorship, and they will control the paradigm, whether that means social media, websites, internet, etc. And that's ultimately the direction it's going. It's going into complete control. So we can either adjust our behavior and actually start changing things, or just play their game, keep playing their game. Thank you guys for listening. Please subscribe, follow, like, share. And if you want to support us and our efforts to bring documentary content and news reports, please go to patreon.com/DerekBros. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, you are powerful, you're beautiful, you are free, and the answer is not to turn social media companies into public utilities. Peace.